Donald said, tough crowd. I said, at least it's a small one. No, good morning again. Thank the Lord for the time that we can be together this week of Thanksgiving. You know, it's hard to be discontent if you're thankful. It's hard to be unthankful and thankful at the same time, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I've got so much to be thankful for. Most mornings, not every morning, when I wake up, God is on my mind. And I've learned to be thankful for that. I woke up the other morning and I'd made it to 9 o'clock because I had a lot to do that day before I even stopped and thought about it. And I stopped and apologized right then. I was like, Lord, I let myself get in the way this morning. And let's just be thankful for what we do have in Christ in salvation this week. And be thankful for our family members, of course. I know sometimes that might be hard. No. I know y'all don't have those kind of problems, not with your family. But anyway, we're going to be here in 2 Samuel chapter 24 this morning. As Mike stated a couple times, he likes to read me, we're coming to the end of 2 Samuel here. And I'm praying about what to do and where to go next, Miss Kim. And I've enjoyed this. It's been a nice study. It was just the leading of the Lord that led me to 1 Samuel. I thought this would be a nice path forward for us to start out with Hannah's prayer. And we're going to close out here at the end of the reign of David. And he made a critical error here, as we've talked about in this chapter here, where he numbered the people. And God judged him. And he was repentant for his sin. And the interesting part here in this last chapter is David's actions brought this on these people, and it's going to take David's actions to remove it. You talked about we're not free, brother, from the consequences of sin. We're free from the chains of it, but if we sin, we're going to suffer the consequences of it. And that's what David has here. And one of the striking things in these verses here, well, let's just start here. I think we're back up in verse 17 here. And David spake unto the Lord when he saw the angel that smote the people, and said, Lo, I have sinned, and I have done wickedly. But these sheep, what have they done? Let thy hand, I pray thee, be against me and against my father's house. And Gad came that day to David and said unto him, Go up, rear an altar unto the Lord in the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. And David, according to the saying of Gad, went up, as the Lord commanded. And Araunah looked and saw the king and his servants coming on toward him. And Araunah went out and bowed himself before the king, on his face upon the ground. And Araunah said, Wherefore is my lord the king come to his servant? And David said, To buy the threshing floor of thee, to build an altar unto the Lord, that the plague may be stayed from the people. And Araunah said unto David, Let my lord the king take and offer up what seemeth good unto him. Behold, here be oxen for burnt sacrifice, and threshing instruments, and other instruments for the oxen for wood. All these things did Araunah as a king give unto the king. And Araunah said unto the king, The Lord thy God accept thee. And the king said unto Araunah, Nay, but I will surely buy it of thee at a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which doth cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. And David built there an altar unto the Lord, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So the Lord was entreated for the land, and the plague was stayed from Israel. What I want to focus on this morning, it's interesting. Gad comes and gives David these instructions, and David did like Abraham did. He went immediately. Delayed obedience is not really obedience, is it? The minute he got instructions from the Lord as to what to do, he stopped everything and did it. And he gets there, and Araunah says, What are you doing here? He says, I'm here to rear up an altar to stop this plague. I'm sure Araunah knew what the plague that was on the land, and he was probably ready for it to be done too. Were y'all ready for COVID to be over? I know I was. And he says, King, take whatever, it's yours. And David makes a striking statement here that I want to focus on this morning here. And he said in verse 24, he says, "Nay, but I will surely buy it of thee at a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which doth cost me nothing." Just talk briefly here for a few minutes about sacrifice. Next to pride, that's probably my least favorite subject, is sacrifice. Because if it doesn't cost you nothing, it's not a sacrifice. The only way something is a sacrifice is it's truly a sacrifice. Dictionary, one of the definitions of sacrifice is to give up something that is valuable to you in order to help another person. David here says, if it doesn't cost me anything, it's not a real sacrifice. Boy, this smacks of the prosperity gospel, doesn't it? Jesus said, "Take up your cross." But we see these charlatans all across the land saying, if you'll just do this, you'll have a nice house and a new car. You won't have any more problems. Yet in the Scriptures, Paul how many times said, "Rejoice in your trials." See, sacrifice, that's something I don't like to do. What did David do? David had already begun a sacrifice, if you will. He stopped what he was doing. He was about the Lord's business of entreating this plague off the land. He went immediately. Stopped what he was doing. He did it personally. He didn't send somebody to do this. One of the greatest gifts I can give you, or one of the biggest sacrifices I can make for you, is give you what? My time. How much time do I give to the Lord every week? I talked about it. It had been 9 o'clock that morning before I stopped and even thought about my Lord, my God. I mean, I went through my normal little routine that morning and got all the way that far because I had some things come up and go on. I was too busy to sacrifice. Most of us have a busy schedule. How much time do we give the Lord? Because it's a sacrifice. What does sacrifice do? What does a sacrifice, when you have to sacrifice something, what does it do? We had that storm a while back and we all went without power for a while, didn't we? We had to make some sacrifices there. It resets your priorities. We had that little old power plant. We couldn't run the air. We had to decide what was important. David here had to decide what was important. Was getting rid of this plague off of his land important for his people? A complete opposite of Saul. Saul was not interested in sacrificing his will. I see a lot of men that. I don't want to give up what I've got to give up. I don't want to take up my crosses, brothers. I just don't. That my flesh. When I would do good, evil is ever present. So what do I want to do? I want to give God something that doesn't cost me anything. But yet in return, I want His best. In return, I want His best. Sounds one-sided, don't it? I told y'all that's why this is probably one of my least favorite subjects next to pride. It's because sacrifice hurts. Sacrifice costs. But is it a loss? If you give something to God, does He give back? Ouch. A lot of times I have so little because I what? I give so little to Him. Like that morning, I hadn't even thought about Him. I just went about my business. And thank God, He smacked me side the head and said, "Hey, did you forget something this morning? Where's my sacrifice?" And I immediately stopped and took care of that. And like I said, I'm not talking down to you this morning. I'm talking back to me too. This is something God has just worked me over with this week. I want to give Him stuff that doesn't cost me anything. I don't want to give Him a sacrifice. I'm very selfish with my time. But yet I want Him to meet all my needs and take care of me and be there when I call. So this week, let's stop and take time and focus. Are we wanting to sacrifice things that don't cost us anything? Do we truly give God anything that's worth anything? I guess that's the key question. What do I give God every week that's worth anything? What is my personal sacrifice to Him? What do I lay on the altar here? Is it worth 50 shekels of silver? I think David probably got off pretty cheap here. Maybe not. But it did cost him something. A gospel that doesn't cost you anything is nothing. Pretty much. That's, like I said, this prosperity stuff that we hear nowadays. Send in your seed offering and you'll be a millionaire. What happened to taking up our cross? What happened to denying self? Listen, we all made a sacrifice this morning. Come out in this cold weather. There was things I could have been doing, but I denied this flesh. I sacrificed my will to be here with my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, to honor the Son and what He's done, and to seek His will, and to further put down this flesh this week and to sacrifice it so that I would see more of Him and think more of Him and then want to give Him more. God loveth a cheerful giver. What are you giving? What are you giving? Let's reflect this week on this. David wouldn't sacrifice something to God that didn't cost him anything because it wasn't a sacrifice. When God told Abraham to bring a sacrifice, what did He tell Abraham to bring? He told him to bring Isaac. He told him to bring something that was near and dear to his heart. Something that Abraham wanted. That was a true sacrifice. And Abraham was willing to do it. You see, if we're willing to make a sacrifice to God that means something, then that tells us and Him that He has our heart. If you're not willing to sacrifice, listen, there are things and there are things I will not do. I will not sacrifice my time for it. They don't have my priorities anymore. I try to, y'all know I have a job and I'm on call every so often, but for the most part, I try to safeguard my Sundays and sacrifice them. That belongs to the Lord. You invade that me and you got a problem. That's the kind of stuff we need. That's the way we need to live when we want to sacrifice things to God. That's too precious. You don't get that. That belongs to Him. That is my sacrifice to Him. It costs me. And I'm glad it does. Because like I said, that sets my priorities and tells me where I am with Him. Like in our marriage. God compares us to His bride. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That's a sacrifice, isn't it? I love y'all. I pray I challenged you this morning. Maybe just self-reflect on what we do sacrifice for God throughout the week. What do we give Him? Do we give Him anything? Are we willing to sacrifice our Isaacs on the altar? He always gives more than He takes. My problem is I don't want to give. I love y'all. I hope y'all have a blessed week this Thanksgiving week.